because I'm genuinely curious. Tonight, we're reading subscribers' spooky, scary stories that were submitted a while ago. As always, before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And if you would like your story read in a future video, make sure to email this email right here, which is also available in the description down below. And if you're feeling generous and you want to tip your favorite sleep dress, then here's my Cash App and tip jar information. Anything is greatly appreciated. Let's get into it. Yeah. Oh, actually, before we get into it, look at my case. We love a festive queen. Okay. The first story is from Yuki. Also, if I ever mispronounce your name or where you're from or something in your story, I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best. I don't know if it's any good, but I decided to share a true story that my mother experienced in her teens. I apologize for any grammar or spelling errors. Don't even worry about it. There have been apparitions following our family for decades. Oh my goodness. Growing up, I was promptly made aware that my mother possessed a certain gift to expel or conjure energies around her. Naturally, this information only seemed to invite the grandest of unsettling situations. However, the irony of my mother acquiring this gift lies within the chaotic oblivion that seemed to almost protect her. Dumb luck helped her escape dangerous situations in her youth. My mother had admitted to stupidly messing with spirit crafts, along with other things that she hadn't fully understood at the time. This had been around the 80s or 90s. Although she continues to suffer from the consequences of her distastefully mindless experimentation, my mother will forever be indebted to her gracious oblivion that once saved her. It was never cold in my mother's little hometown. Little. But she never recalled it being warm either. In her memories, she always felt a sense of primitive protection, yet there was always something going around her. She would often roam around the bustling streets and explore the quietest of places with her friends. As a result, it hadn't taken long for the experiment to die out. So one night, in an attempt to reignite the fun in her friend group, they decided to mess the quite frequently misused Ouija board. Oh no. Oh no. My mother never did disclose the events following that night, nor had she ever finished telling us that story. However, she had told us what happened after the fact. Approximately every night at some unruly hour, my mother would be startled awake to sounds of low, warped, and coherent whispers that seemingly daunted her. The very first occurrence left her frightened, the next unsettled, until she began to grow desperate for it to stop. Seething from restlessness, inevitably this perpetual pattern of being woken up led her to an epiphany. She was supposed to find something. She hadn't known why nor what it had manifested, as a thought in her mind and later had become an unbearable itch. My mother had to find whatever it was. With that, she was off frantically, migrating along the darkness of her bedroom, beginning by peering under her bed to then dissect the contents from within her dresser, definitively ending by stumbling into her deconstructed closet. Without reason, she placed her cold palms on the colder wall inside her closet and began to run her hands along its entirety. As she got to the bottom corner, she could feel a slight ridge amongst the smoothness. Using the tip of her fingernail, she yanked and tugged at it until she felt something begin to audibly detach from the surface. It had been the very same Ouija board that she had used with her friends. How did she know it was the same? Because it was the same distinct symbols they carved on the wooden back. The planchet was later discovered under her pillow most bizarre ways. The most tragic I recall being a girl that was discovered rotting alone in her completely empty apartment. There was no reason for it to be found this way, as her home was typically cluttered with junk. She surely wasn't planning on moving. She couldn't afford to. The most unsettling thing, the wallpaper had been torn up and dramatically chipped all throughout her home, almost as if someone had been impulsively picking at it, pick, picking at it. Similarly to how my mother picked at hers for several nights. As for the board itself, it had been improperly discarded after the group had halted their endeavor. So it was odd that it reappeared, almost like magic. My mother, heartbroken, would never use the board again. The event shaped the course of her life. My mother turned a new leaf and held a firm regard for the possible outcomes of using things like that. However, despite this newly found perspective, it became far too late to turn back time. We believe that my mother brought something back with her. It liked to play tricks on her eyes. One evening, when she was putting her laundry away, listening to music through her earbuds, she faintly heard someone call for her. She briefly removed her earbud from her ear and turned her head, waiting a second to see if someone would call her again. When no one did, she placed it back in her ear and continued to load clean clothes on hangers. A minute later, she felt someone tap her on her shoulder and turned her head once more, this time a moment longer. Again, finding no one there, her hand moved before her head could turn, continuing to adjust her previous position. The second her head faced back to the position in her closet, her eyes began to water as she immediately flung herself a few steps back. She claimed to have seen a hanging figure in her closet, but in the midst of panicking, it vanished as quickly as it appeared. This had later grown into a common occurrence of her witnessing disturbing imagery in her closet. It never got much easier to stomach, oh poor thing. Years later, at a separate location, my mother had discovered my older brother, who had been a toddler at the time, playing in her closet. She warned him not to mess with anything in there and kept tracking him out, but of course, him being very young, he'd end up going right back. My mother, thinking he was just bored, went out to the next room to grab him some toys and trinkets for him to play with instead. When she returned, he was now out of the closet, sitting in the center of the room, laughing intently, with a Ouija board in his small hands. That same one from years ago. Oh my gosh, I have so many chills. So many chills. Ever since then, it wasn't difficult to note the strange noises or figures we all collectively had been seeing. Whether you'd call them apparitions, ghosts, demons, jinns, I no longer wish to have any more scary encounters with them. They're scary. Oh my goodness, that was it for that story. There are so many others that I could tell, so I hope this was okay. Thank you for taking the time to read. I seriously enjoy your content. I hope your day has been going great. Oh my gosh, I can barely read now. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your mom's experiences with me and with us. That's truly terrifying, and oh my gosh, I hope they go away and leave y'all alone and can mind their business. You don't deserve that. That's, oh my gosh, I'm here for you, and I'm happy you found my channel. I'm sending you so much love and positivity your way, and I rebuke that energy. The next story, I don't know if this is considered scary, but it was at the time. I get that. I was home alone at the house with only my sibling, who was asleep in their room. I was watching TV in the living room when I heard a knock looks like he was in his early 20s. He was asking if my mom was home, and I told him no, she's at work. Oh no, wrong answer. Wrong answer. I'm scared to read the rest. He was asking if my mom was home, so I told him no, she was at work. And he asked what time she gets off, so I told him 6, because at that time, that was the normal time she got home. He said okay, and he got in his car and drove off. My mom got home early that day around 3. I told her about the guy and then forgot about him. So when he came back at 4, I was so scared, and my mom answered the door. He seemed surprised. I don't know what they were talking about, but my mom shut the door and said, "Didn't you tell him I was getting off at 6? I told her yes. She got mad at me for opening the door in the first place. Rightfully so, but I don't know if he came early on accident or if he did it on purpose with bad intent. I still think about it a lot. I don't know what I would have done if my mom wasn't there. I'm so happy you're safe, first of all. Second of all, never ever say your parents aren't home. Oh my gosh. Always say somebody's home, even if it's a lie. But I'm so happy you're safe. And if, honestly, the way your mom reacted and the way you described it, I feel like he totally had bad intentions, and it's so good that your mom was there. Thank you so much also for sending that and sharing with me. The next story or stories is from Kaylin. Hello. First of all, let me say, I love your channel. I love you too. And your vibes are immaculate. Thank you. My favorite videos of yours are your Reddit and subscriber scary stories, and when you asked for submissions, I really wanted to contribute. I appreciate you. Thank you. I have several personal true stories, or true spooky experiences, but Leah Whispers and Julie's Quiet Place have already put these stories in their videos, and I wanted to send you something new. In a few of your videos, you mentioned that you'd accept original horror fiction along the lines of the no sleep type, and I just happen to love writing psychological horror flash fiction, so I figured I'd send you 3 of the ones I've written. And you're welcome to use any, all, or none of them in a video, whether you share them or not. I hope they are entertaining to read. Thank you, girly. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Number 1. Aged up. Carl studied the images of the lost children on the Walmart tag board with pale, slushy blue eyes. Most are probably runaways he knew. Cases of kids snatched from the playground and locked in the basement for 10 years are anomalies compared to the profusion of children stolen by disgruntled divorced parents. Some of these kids have been missing for several years. Those children had 2 pictures under their names. One from when they first went missing, and one a computer rendering of how they most likely looked now. Carl's eyes fastened on the picture of a girl in the center of the board. The name printed above the images was Casey McLean. He didn't think the aged-up version of her looked right at all. The girl, 3, when she disappeared, had curly auburn pigtails and sparkling brown eyes. She was rosy and laughing in the picture with miniature, round, pink-framed eyeglasses. In her other picture, aged up to 13, her red hair was as curly as before. Her brown eyes still had that spark of laughter in them. Her glasses were larger. She was smiling, showing even white teeth. Goodness, Carl thought. Computer renderings are rather flattering, but not very accurate. Surely, he mused, being a victim of abduction for 10 years twisted in my head. But I love that. Okay, story number 2. This one is called Through a Glass Darkly. The pair that approached Selena in the snack aisle of the grocery store looked absurdly stereotypical classic pamphlet-wielding door knockers. The boy, who looked like he hadn't yet cracked 20, wore khakis and a white polo shirt. His look of wide-eyed, nerdy innocence completed with round glasses. The girl was shrouded in a white maxi dress, and her long, straggling blonde hair contrasted sharply with her dark brown eyes. There was none of the boy's manic exuberance in her face. Her eyes were cold, like coals burned out. "Congratulations," the boy said, his voice young and crisp. "What?" Selena asked bemusedly, her mind still half on her grocery list. "It's always wonderful to see new life soon to arrive in the world," the boy said, smiling in a distantly unnerving way. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, rounded under the stretchy maternity shirt. "Thanks," she said with less than no enthusiasm. Well, ma'am, there's never been a better time to join the Church of Revenants," he said, with a horrible combination of eager naivety and calculating hunger on his face. "I'm already a Christian, thank you," Selena said, lying with a smile. "Oh, but we have much more to offer than impotent doctrine parroted in modern churches," the boy said in a rush, handing her a pamphlet. Selena raised her dark eyebrows slightly, giving the pamphlet a cursory glance. It was eye-catching. She'd give him that. The first 2 panels of the flyer were covered in black and white, frankly disturbing images. A sobbing, emaciated toddler, a billowing mushroom cloud, a firing squad aiming at a line of gagged prisoners, a man covered in open sores. The third panel displayed a pale green sprout emerging from loamy brown soil, overlaying the horrific images or words. "For now we see through a glass darkly, and over the sprout, but then I shall know, even as I am known." Selena flipped the flyer over, and on the back were words: "Join the Church of Revenants before it is too late," and an address. "Thanks," Selena said. "Maybe I'll drop by sometime, but I really ought to be going now." "Of course, but before you go," said the boy, positively quivering with enthusiasm and looking intently at Selena's stomach. Now irritated and increasingly unnerved, Selena snapped, "I'm sorry, but I don't have time. Have a nice day." She turned and speed-walked in the opposite direction. Selena was never sure what made her look back, but she did. The woman in the white dress stood alone, looking at Selena with her cold, burnt eyes. The woman's eyes locked on Selena's stomach so intently it was as if she was trying to see through layers of fabric and flesh to the child concealed beneath them. After a second, her gaze slid deliberately to the pamphlet in Selena's hand before snapping back to meet her eyes. The woman placed her pale hand on her flat stomach and ever so slightly shook her head. Okay, realization that lived deep in her brain. Look at me, Enola. The voice was a terrible blend of old and young, hoarse and girlish. Enola jumped out of her skin, shards of adrenaline piercing her body. The students sitting on either side of her gave her a confused, reproachful look before returning to their own papers. The shadow girl was standing right in front of her, and Enola knew it. She could feel her, sense her, detect waves of pale energy radiating off of her. Enola bent over her exam paper, refusing to look. Look at me, Enola. No. Enola hissed, and then instantly clapped her hand over her mouth. She was not embarrassed about disrupting her classmates, who were shooting her another round of disapproving looks. She was horrified by what she had done. She had acknowledged the shadow girl, and by doing so, Enola had acknowledged that she was not, in fact, alone. The next night, Enola woke at precisely 3 in the morning, and she felt the shadow girl more intensely than ever before. She turned to the wall, trying not to breathe. Look at me! Look at me! Look at me, Enola! It was the voice of a young girl, and yet somehow distorted with a hoarse, guttural note. That range of an old dispute. The sound froze Enola, dulling her senses, crushing her with dread. The voice drew closer and closer until she could swear she felt a cold breath dusting her ears with words. Suddenly blinding, anger cracked up inside of her. How dare the shadow girl tear her brain apart like this? How dare she interfere with Enola's life, steal her sleep, gnaw at her sanity, take advantage of her darkest moments? What was she, anyway, but a voice? Fear fled before fury as Enola ripped the blankets off and turned around. You want me to look at you? Fine. Fine. Now where are you? There was nothing to see. Nothing. Enola peered into the darkness. Nothing. Shaking like a leaf in a gale, Enola went to get a drink of water. She filled one of the little cups reserved for mouthwash, with water from the bathroom faucet, and knocked back the liquid. Look at me, Enola. The voice was so close. Enola jumped violently, sloshing the cup of water. Enola jumped back violently, sloshing the second cup of water down her shirt. She glanced wildly around, but she knew where she had to look. Dread crescendoing inside of her, Enola forced her eyes to look and fix on the bathroom mirror. Hello, Enola. Hello, Enola, said the girl in the mirror. It was her reflection, but not. It moved independently. Enola's short, sleek, shiny black hair was long, dull, and matted in the mirror. Her flawless, pale skin was waxy, sickly hue, and her vivid blue eyes had turned black into black pools in the face of the girl in the mirror. And the hands were dripping red. The shadow girl watched Enola's horror with lazy enjoyment, licking her fingers drenched in scarlet with apparent relish. Who are you? The shadow girl chuckled, a horrible gurgling sound. No, Enola. Who are you? A wave of dizzy sickness crashed over Enola, revulsion welling up in her. She steadied herself against the cold faux marble counter, chest heaving. She didn't know how much time passed until she was in control again. But when she finally chanced a tentative peek into the mirror, the relief of seeing her normal reflection was like morphine in her veins. She had done it. She had looked and she had lived, and the shadow girl had left. Triumphant, Enola slept soundly for the first time in weeks. It wasn't until that morning that she noticed the red handprint on the edge of the bathroom counter. Bitch. Thank you so much for sending your stories. If you have more, send them my way. I like them. Keep them coming. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Because my phone's about to die. So I'm gonna end it here before it dies. So as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and to comment down below. And if you have your own Reddit-like stories or your own scary short stories that you would like to send to me, make sure you email this email right here, which is also available in the description down below, as well as my tip jar information if you're feeling generous and you want to tip your favorite sleeptress. This is how you can do that. Anything is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much to everyone who sends me stories. They're really greatly appreciated. And I'm sorry so long